We all want to see ourselves as good, so we tell ourselves that we're kind, reasonable, moral, controlled beings. But sometimes we notice something that leaks through that image. Maybe we notice ourselves experiencing a flash of envy, or an irrational fear, or perhaps a hidden desire. These kinds of moments can often make us feel quite uncomfortable, so we suppress them and deny them. According to Carl Jung though, these moments, as in the parts that we try to hide, they're not meaningless flaws, they're what's known as the shadow. And Jung believed that on the path to becoming whole, it's of fundamental importance to learn how to integrate that shadow. Today, we're going to look at what the shadow really is, and how it forms, how it shows up in your life, and most importantly, how you can learn to integrate it. So, what is the shadow? Carl Jung described the shadow as the unconscious part of the personality that the conscious ego doesn't identify with. So, put in simple terms, it's all the parts of yourself that you've rejected, denied, or pushed down. This includes your darker impulses, let's say aggression, pride, envy, but also within that, your hidden potential. Sometimes we repress things not because they're evil, but because we feel like they don't fit the image of ourselves that we're trying to maintain and put out to the world. This image is called the ego ideal, and that's the version of ourselves that we're striving to be on a daily basis. It's shaped by culture, family, religion, and society. If your ego ideal is the kind, agreeable person, then anger becomes its shadow. If your ego ideal is the strong, independent person, then any prospect of vulnerability or needing to depend on someone else for something could get buried away. And the more rigid you are with your ego ideal, the more powerful your shadow becomes. Freud versus Jung, two visions of the unconscious. Freud also believed in unconscious forces, but his view of the shadow, while he didn't use that exact same term, was more narrow. For Freud, the unconscious mind was a kind of place of respite where repressed sexual and aggressive instincts could retreat when they were deemed unacceptable by society. Jung, on the other hand, saw the unconscious more as something symbolic, mythic, and even sacred. Jung believed the shadow could simultaneously be dark, but also gold dust, not just shameful urges, but perhaps lost creativity, strengths we've forgotten about, and truths that we've tried to detach from. While Freud emphasized repression for the sake of social conformity, Jung emphasized integration for the sake of personal wholeness. That's the key difference between the two. For Jung, the unconscious, including the shadow, wasn't just something to be managed, it was more something that we need to try to befriend. Why we repress the shadow. If we repress a part of ourselves, then there must be a reason for doing so. When we're children, we learn that certain traits bring love and acceptance, whilst others might bring punishment or shame. As a result, over time, we learn to internalize these lessons. For example, a young boy who cries too often could be told to man up, so he buries his vulnerability or his willingness to express how he actually feels. A girl who's more outspoken than most might be told that she's too much or too intense, so she silences her own voice. By adulthood, we've become strangers to entire parts of ourselves. There is a risk with this, of course. What we repress doesn't really disappear. It festers and even grows without us realizing it. It might leak out in the form of passive-aggressive comments, or in addictions, or in overreacting to things that some people might consider trivial. We might start to see in others the things that we haven't accepted within ourselves, and then criticize them for it. This phenomenon is what we refer to as projection, and it's often a telltale sign that there's work that needs to be done on our shadow. Darryl Sharp's 3 steps to shadow integration. Jungian analyst, publisher, and author Darryl Sharp once said, "There is no generally effective technique for assimilating the shadow. It's more like diplomacy or statesmanship, and it's always an individual matter. First, one has to accept and take seriously the existence of the shadow. Second, one has to become aware of its qualities and intentions. This happens through conscientious attention to moods, fantasies, and impulses. Third, a long process of negotiation is unavoidable. He then offers 3 key things we can do to manage and integrate our own shadow. Firstly, and unsurprisingly, we need to accept and acknowledge the shadow's existence. Now, this is actually harder than it sounds. It requires you to be brutally honest with yourself. You've got to be willing to admit that there are things within you that, realistically, you'd rather not see. Maybe it's envy, maybe it's pettiness, perhaps it's lust, rage, or something else entirely. But also, it could be your own suppressed brilliance, dreams and passions you've forgotten about, strength you've buried away into the recesses of your mind. Integration starts with looking at these things without judgment, just identifying them and being aware that they even exist. Next, we've got to strive to become aware of the shadow's qualities and intentions. For example, you could ask yourself, when do I get triggered? What do I criticize the most in others? These are often reflections of the shadow. Track your moods, your fantasies, your impulses. What do they want? What are they protecting? The shadow isn't just something random. When it appears in fleeting glimpses, it could be trying to get your attention so that you can work on it. The next step is to engage in the long process of negotiation with your shadow. This isn't some one-time epiphany. It's more of a dialogue or relationship. Sometimes the shadow can have destructive tendencies, so, of course, it needs to be tamed. Other times, it might be holding gold, like your hidden dreams or strengths you've forgotten about and repressed, in which case you need to liberate it. You need to listen carefully to it, and then you choose how to respond. Not by repressing and not by obeying, but by integrating it, consciously. The cost of repression. When we repress the shadow, it doesn't just stay hidden out of our reach. It can sabotage us from the dark. For example, unacknowledged or unaddressed rage could become depression. Fear that hasn't been addressed could become avoidance. A disowned desire might become compulsive behaviour. And here's a scary thought. If we don't own our shadow and understand it and negotiate with it, then we become an easy target for mass movements, ideologies and cults that promise to give us the very thing we've been denying ourselves. Jung warned, the world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. Don't let the world tell you who you are or who you should be. Find that out for yourself and have confidence in that which you state yourself to be. So, what does integration actually look like? What does it mean then from a practical standpoint to integrate your shadow? It means paying attention to and noticing your envy and asking what unmet need it points to. It means noticing your rage and letting it fuel you to push the boundaries of what you can achieve instead of letting it fuel your own self-destruction. It means noticing the limiting beliefs you hold about yourself and identifying how they could be preventing you from self-actualization. Sometimes it means owning your selfishness and learning to prioritize yourself so that you can stop pretending to be a martyr. In other instances, it might mean reclaiming your confidence so you can stop hiding behind a false sense of humility that's in fact grounded on your own insecurities. Integration of your shadow isn't about becoming good. It's about becoming whole and living a life aligned with who you are in your soul, with the good, bad and ugly all integrated within this. The collective shadow and its spiritual implications. So Jung didn't just stop at the individual level. He also warned of the collective shadow, the darkness that exists within entire groups, nations, cultures. Whenever a society claims moral purity, it could well be time to be weary. The things which it denies and represses will eventually erupt if they're left unaddressed, and often this can be in the form of violence or extreme control. However, the inverse is also true. A society that allows room for shadow work, dialogue, confession, honesty and humility can evolve. This isn't just psychology, it's work from a spiritual standpoint too. It's about working on the soul. Humility has in the past been referred to as the mother of all virtues because it opens the heart and soul up to transformation and is the first step to acknowledging that there's work that needs to be done. The shadow's not your enemy. You're not here to be perfect, and none of us truly can be perfect. Perhaps you're just here to learn more about yourself and the world. Shadow work isn't about shame or guilt. It's more about being curious, compassionate, and having courage. because facing your own shadow does take strength. On the other side of that confrontation though, is where freedom might lie. What I mean by that is the freedom to live with integrity and honesty, and to be able to act from a position of compassion instead of from a place of fear. This means to respond to things, rather than to be reactionary and ruled by your emotions at every instance. That certain darkness within isn't something that needs to be feared, it's something that needs to be known, so that it can no longer rule over you or guide how you behave. And on that note, it's time to wrap things up. Thanks for watching this video. If there's anything you did or didn't like, or rather something that resonated with you or something that didn't, then just feel free to let me know, and see you next time.